But a short-term reward often is the worst thing for us. And a long-term goal is not only harder to achieve, but it's also much easier to fail. So what you need is a form of feedback, be it positive or negative. This feedback will help your performance and give your habit a clear definition as to what it actually means to create a new cycle, what it means to fail and also succeed when you try to stick to these cycles. I suggest that you look for feedback in your actual progress and also how you feel you're progressing towards your habit. And what I mean by that is not like a fucking KPI, because that's just really boring. First, think about your ability to be efficient and effective. Are you both or either one of those things? Such as, are you bad at being effective when you're trying to put a plan together? So if you're not as effective or as efficient, then perhaps your initial approach should be just to reduce the amount that you expect from yourself at the beginning of your habit. Reduce your expectations to something simple, such as a number of days or possibly just a week. Start the cycle slow. So here's a really easy example. You might be looking to eat something like more protein in your diet, but you're often the type of person who skips their breakfast. And you don't necessarily like eating a large breakfast because you're in a rush. But 2 to 3 times out of your week, so 2 to 3 mornings of that week, you can actually say, well, I'm going to eat some eggs. I'm going to eat 3 eggs for breakfast just because I want to be able to begin that cycle into my habit, but actually I'm finding it quite difficult to do. So what you're going to do is you're going to take very small steps towards creating that cycle for your habit. Then eventually, once you feel comfortable with doing that, then you can possibly start to grow into more meals per week where you're introducing more protein. Now, all of this sounds quite involved and quite complicated, and I completely understand. However, in my experience of working with clients when it comes to weight loss and fitness, if it isn't there already, it isn't going to be there. It's something that you have to develop. It's a skill, or it's something that you just haven't developed naturally, and that's absolutely fine. But if you're going to find it difficult to be able to begin a habit, and yes, okay, you're going to start creating a plan, you're also trying to create small initiations in that plan, actually trying to start that cycle very, very slowly. So the example that I've given you with someone who's trying to eat more protein in their diet sounds a bit pathetic, but actually for some people, it is actually what they need to be able to do, to be able to generate a new cycle. That's literally what you're trying to do. You're trying to create and generate a cycle which eventually should become a new habit. Remember, it's high volume that gets you through the initial sticking points of a new habit. Now, I'll share with you one of my really bad habits. One of my habits is that I would drink quite a lot of coffee during the period of a whole day. The nature of my work is that I start very early. So I start at 6:30, sometimes even before, but I tend to start at 6:30 in the morning with a client. And I can easily go all the way through till 7:30, 8:30, sometimes even 9 o'clock at night. And pretty much I'm working the entire length of that day. So coffee is definitely something that is needed. And I knew to some extent that coffee wasn't a bad thing, but it also in large amounts wasn't a good thing. And because coffee wasn't that calorific, excluding putting lots of sugar and lots of milk into it, you can actually have it black. So it's definitely something that was a pick-me-up, if you like, something that I enjoyed having, but actually started to become slightly detrimental to my day. And what I mean by that is that by the time I'd had my 6th or possibly even my 7th coffee, I'd actually start to feel a little bit sick and quite nauseous, and this was happening on quite a frequent basis. So my habit needed to change, but I like coffee. My goal was to create a limit to how much coffee I could have per day, and that was going to be just 4 cups. And one of the ways that I managed to have just 4 cups was through time. I was making sure that I was only having 2 cups at the beginning of my day in the morning, and I was only having 2 cups in the afternoon and stopping at a certain period, such as 5 or maybe 6 p.m. What I was also making sure not to do is drink coffees back to back, which is obviously a really quick-fire way to accumulate the consumption of caffeine. If I went over the limit of my 4 coffees, let's say that I met up with a client and we had a coffee together, I wasn't necessarily going to beat myself up about it, but I was actually going to make a mental note that I had possibly crept up to 5 or 6 coffees on that day, and that I wasn't being as congruent as I should be. If I'd set myself a goal, I wasn't basically achieving it. And therefore, what I realize is that I don't want to be having something that I'm constantly relying on as a pick-me-up. It is a pick-me-up, it's something that I enjoy, and I know to a certain extent it's definitely something that is good for you, but on the amount that you kind of start to have too much of it, you need to be able to say, am I relying on this? I don't want that. So not being dependent on something such as caffeine was actually a better option for me and pushed me to consume less.
It's the Yo Series.